Nurses are often a cipher for life and nurturing, and many are passionately dedicated to their caring profession. Here are two accounts of ghost nurses who can't seem to move on from carrying out their eerie night shift duties. Recently, the Austin Hospital, a major health facility in Melbourne, Australia, shared accounts of one hardworking resident ghost known as the Grey Nurse. Over the years, the very active spectre has been sighted wearing a grey nurse's uniform dating back to a bygone era. The spiritual presence is a very dedicated nurse who has decided to stay on shift long after she departed the earthly realm. The grey nurse is a friendly ghost who actually provides care to patients and carries out good deeds such as pressing the call buzzer for patients who are unable to. Many unexplained occurrences have been reported by nursing staff over decades. 30 years ago, the now Divisional Director for Cancer and Neurosciences, Cherie Cheshire, was on night shift on the neurology ward, working in the 3KZ building at Austin Hospital. Although there were supposed to be 3 nurses on night shift, that night they were short-staffed and only had 2. One patient called Carol had complete paralysis caused by MS. She was unable to take a drink of water herself, but suffered from a very dry mouth. Consequently, the nursing staff attended to her at least hourly to assist her in sipping some water, even overnight. During this shift, the nurses were flat out. At about 9:30 p.m, Cherie filled Carol's 1-litre jug with iced water and then gave her a drink. However, it became very busy and she didn't manage to get back to Carol's room until midnight. By that time, Carol only had half a jug of water, and she told Cherie that the other nurse had been in several times to help her drink. Cherie was puzzled by this and checked with the other nurse, who said she had not entered Carol's room. When Cherie asked Carol about who helped her with drinking her water again, she said it was the older agency nurse wearing the old-fashioned grey dress. Another former Austin Hospital ICU manager, Jen Hancock, became aware of the helpful grey nurse presence back in 1977. She was working night shifts on the old 6A ward in Heidelberg House when the buzzer rang and a female patient needed a pan. She took it to her and asked her to buzz when she was finished. 10 minutes later, Jen had still heard no buzz, so went back to check. The woman was lying down in bed half asleep with her curtains pulled back. She told Jen that the other nurse, wearing a grey uniform with a veil, had removed the bedpan and made her comfortable. At the time, Jen was working with a male enrolled nurse, so then asked the registered nurse overseeing 3 wards in Heidelberg House if she knew of any other nurses there in a different uniform. She didn't. Jen was later told that the grey nurse was a common occurrence in Heidelberg House and that patients there had often described their encounters with her. Another nurse unit manager named Karen Owen has also reported unexplained occurrences from when she worked in the Harold Stokes building at the Austin Hospital. She related that when heading up the dark corridor in the building on Ward 7B, there would always be a distinct cold feeling when she attended beds 1 and 2. On many occasions, the intravenous therapy or nasogastric feeding pumps would alarm, but by the time she reached them, she would find them silenced and reset without any staff having been there. The nurses often commented that the grey nurse must have seen to them. Service Planning Project Officer Kate Ireland also heard many accounts while nursing at the affiliated Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital. She had first heard about the grey nurse many years previously when she was a graduate nurse, and as the apparition only seemed to appear at night, the night duty staff would share their experiences. The grey nurse was reputed to be very kind, placing blankets over patients when they were cold, assisting them to drink water when they couldn't manage it themselves, and even helping patients onto a bedpan when the other nurses were busy. Kate says that while most of the grey nurse's work was not witnessed, Some night duty nurses would say that they had occasionally glimpsed sightings of her. The wards had long corridors that were very dark at night, and she had been seen down at the end of the corridor just before she turned a corner. Of course, when witnesses went to look, there was never anybody to be seen. Many nurses have a lifetime of dedication, but some seem so passionate about their work that they continue their service after stumps. Perhaps many haunt the wards and corridors of their previous existence, continuing to pursue their profession. Kami Walker is an ex-nurse and now Vative Healthcare CEO who grew up always knowing that nursing was her vocation. She spent her early days training in the extremely old hospitals in England, which brought her in contact with a number of experiences that were quite out of the ordinary. She has told of an occurrence in one of these hospitals where she was working night duty with another nurse in the Florence Nightingale ward. Between them, they were looking after 30 patients whose beds were behind curtains. One night in the old ward, they very clearly heard the big doors into the ward open. Kami said that there was no mistaking the sound, as the doors were massive and made a very distinct noise. The two nurses both assumed that it was the night sister entering to do her rounds, and they were waiting for her to poke her head between one of the curtains so as to say hello. However, they eventually grew suspicious after not seeing or hearing anything, so they looked out from behind the curtain and saw a startling figure. The strange moving object looked like an old nurse making her way up the ward. Kami continued that the person they were observing was wearing the old-style big hat and antiquated uniform with the large cape. The bizarre aspect of this apparition was that they could see the figure from only the knees up. As they found out later, many people had seen the same apparition, and it was believed that she was the ghost of an old former night nurse, still doing her rounds. The reason that witnesses could see her only from her knees up was because the floor of the ward had been renovated. The ghost of the nurse was still walking along on the old floor, below the one that the living were actually walking on. Kami came to understand that the ghost of this former nurse was well known within the hospital and that everyone saw her every so often. It was simply believed that she was just an old nurse walking along her ward in her time, but a strong, moving image that seems imprinted in our reality.